Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into Exodus chapter 7 today. It's a battle for the ages. Not between armies, though. This one's between gods. Well, a god and someone who seems to think he's a god.
Yeah, a real power struggle, and the fate of a whole nation's hanging in the balance.
No pressure. So, anyone just tuning in, could you set the scene for us? Where are we in Exodus?
We're picking up where chapter 6 left off. Pharaoh's just refused to let the Israelites go. Told God, nah, I don't think so.
That's a bold move. So that refusal kind of sets the stage for this showdown, right? What's God do?
God appoints Moses. He's going to be his representative to Pharaoh, like his point person. God tells Moses, I'm putting you in the place of God to Pharaoh. Just think about that for a second. The authority.
Wow. Never thought about it like that. But, I mean, doesn't Pharaoh already think he is a god?
And that's what makes that statement so powerful. It's like a direct challenge. God's going right at Pharaoh's claimed divinity. Straight to the top. But then we see Moses, and he's got doubts. He's not sure he can pull this off. Doesn't think he's a good speaker. What's God do?
God's got his back. He brings in Aaron, Moses' brother. He's going to be the spokesperson. It shows that God equips those he calls, even if it's not, how we'd expect.
Don't worry, Moses. I got you. Something like that.
Exactly.
So Moses and Aaron, they're in position. But we got to talk about this hardened heart thing. God hardens Pharaoh's heart. Always been kind of tough to wrap my head around. Help me out here.
Yeah, people debate it a lot. But look at the Hebrew. The word is kashay. It means a heart that's resistant, like it's calloused over. Not so much that God's yanking away free will, more like God sees how stubborn Pharaoh is deep down.
So even when God's moving things around, free will's still in play.
Exactly. It's more like God's amplifying the defiance that's already there. And this goes back to Pharaoh thinking he's a god. He can't stand anything challenging his power, even, the god.
So sure of himself, he can't even imagine someone higher up. Yep. And that's when things get really interesting. God tells Aaron to throw down his staff. It turns into a snake. Talk about a power move.
Not just any snake either, right?
Right. Tannin is the word they use. Like a monster, maybe even a dragon. Can you imagine that? Out of some Egyptian myth, just appearing in front of Pharaoh.
A dragon. What do those mean to the Egyptians anyway?
Well, they had this myth. The sun god Ra battles the serpent god Apep every night. Who's going to control the chaos? Will the sun rise? Big stuff.
It's like God's using their language but turning it up to 11.
Totally. He's showing them on their terms that he's the one in control, even over their scariest gods. But there's another layer to this.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, the snake, it's called a monster. Some people say that lines up with demonic forces.
Now that's interesting. What are you thinking?
What if it's not just about Egyptian gods? What if it's about God showing he's got power over, the demonic, too?
I've read this story a million times, never thought of that. But then it gets even crazier, right? The magicians show up. They copy the miracle. Snake staffs all over the place. How could anyone tell what's real?
It's all smoke and mirrors, right? Trying to match God, but without the real power behind it. But the answer's right there in the story. Don't you remember? Aaron's staff eats all the other staffs.
No, yeah. It's a snake eat snake world, I guess.
It's more than just a show, though. It's showing God's on top. He's more powerful than any of those fake-o gods, demons included.
So even if you can copy God, you can't beat the original.
You got it.
Okay, so we've got this power struggle. Snake's battling it out, and Pharaoh, he's just asking for it.
Yeah.
So ready for the first plague.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that Nile River. So picture this, the Nile, Egypt's lifeline, right? It's blood, literally blood.
Yeah, you can't even imagine how important that river was to them. Food, water, transportation, everything.
Everything. And it gets worse. It wasn't just the river. The text makes it clear that even if they had water stored away, it turned to blood too.
Talk about sending a message. But why blood, though? I get the whole scary, dramatic thing.
Yeah.
But is there something more to it?
Blood. I mean, it's a big deal all through the Bible. Life, sacrifice, promises. It's like the heart of what keeps us going.
So God turns their river, the thing that gives them life, into blood. He's saying, I'm in control even of life itself.
Exactly. It's a pretty intense reminder that they might not like it, but they're still dependent on God.
But even after seeing that, Pharaoh still doesn't budge.
Yeah.
That's wild. How much more convincing does this guy need?
Well, it might seem crazy to us, but there's a reason. This whole back and forth, God's power versus Pharaoh's stubbornness, it sets a pattern we see with all the plagues. This isn't random, there's a structure here.
Now that you mention it, there's this rhythm, right? There's a warning. Then bam, 3 plagues and 3. That number pops up a lot in the Bible. Is that important here?
Absolutely. 3 is often when God's will becomes real in the world. The
Ah.
Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, even Jesus, 3 days, right?
I see what you're saying. So these plagues in sets of 3, it's like God's putting his signature on them.
I think so. It's more than just a natural disaster or bad luck. It's deliberate. Each one's a message. God showing who he is and what he can do.
It's amazing, right? These old stories, they just keep giving layer after layer. But we've been talking a lot about God's side of things. What do you think Pharaoh's thinking during all of this?
Ooh, that's the question, isn't it? Imagine, not just any king, but a god, or at least that's what his people think, and suddenly everything he thought he knew is being challenged.
Not to mention the pressure. He's got advisors, an economy that's probably tanking, people freaking out.
It makes you wonder, at what point does someone, even someone as stubborn as Pharaoh, crack? Or, maybe they don't.
Yeah, I mean, how many plagues would it take for you to change your mind?
Right. People have been asking that question forever. When do you finally see what's right in front of you?
It's bigger than Pharaoh, isn't it? Makes you think about our own lives.
Totally. But we're left with this image, the Nile. It's blood. Everyone in Egypt depended on that river, and now...
It makes you realize we're all pretty vulnerable, right? So much of life is out of our hands.
Even now, with all our technology and everything, there are still bigger forces out there.
This deep dive has been amazing. It's wild how these stories, they still feel so real,
That's what's so cool about these old texts. Power, faith, stubbornness as heck. It's all still relevant today.
So anyone listening want to know what happens next? This face-off, it's just getting started.
Oh yeah, buckle up. More plagues are coming. God's going to keep showing what he can do. Pharaoh's going to keep, being Pharaoh. And we're going to see how it all goes down.
If you're hooked, and trust me, you will be, keep reading. Exodus chapter 8, it's just a page away.